All right, hello and welcome to another episode of the Teacher's Cup of Coffee. If you listen to the pod, you know I'm always excited. I'm always revved up, but I can't even tell you how excited I am for today. You can see on the screen now, I have one of my educational heroes, Cornelius Minor, and I'm so grateful for him for being here. But I got to start with like a formal. I got to welcome him. If you don't know about him, I got to teach you a little bit. So Cornelius Minor is a Brooklyn-based educator. He works with teachers, school leaders, community-based organizations, all to support equitable literacy reform. His book, We Got This, explores how the work of creating more equitable school spaces is embedded in our everyday choices, specifically in the choice to really listen to kids. Along with his partner and wife, Cass Minor, did I say that right, Cass?
Yep, you got it.
He has established the Minor Collective, a community-based movement designed to foster sustainable changes in schools. On a more personable level, Cornelius is an educational hero of mine. His book, We Got This, is something I used with teachers as a principal. It's something I've used personally to improve my practice, and it's something that is now a staple of my teacher education classes at American International College. I've read the book many times, Cornelius, and the best part about it is every time I read it, I learn something new. There's such depth in what you're teaching us in this book that it's not a one and done. I reread it to teach it, and I get new things from it each time. His work has pushed me to think differently, maximize relationships, and truly listen to all the things that students tell us. I can honestly say, Cornelius, you've had a major impact on my work as an educator. I'm also going to say, Cornelius, we're thrilled, is going to be a keynote speaker at our New England League of Middle Schools conference next week. He's kicking us off on Friday, March 20th. That's it. Cornelius, welcome to the Teacher's Cup of Coffee.
Tim, is it so exciting to be here? I mean, and just for me, to get a moment to step away from class and to hang out with you, it just feels like amazing, and thinking about the book, I wrote the book for you, I wrote the book because I was sitting in my classroom trying to find my way. And, I remember saying, wow, if I could talk to first year teacher Cornelius, what would I say? If I could talk to the Cornelius that maybe one day might want to be an administrator, or the Cornelius that maybe one day might want to think about being a coach, what would I say to that person? If I could talk to 12-year-old Cornelius, what would I say to that person? And so I really wrote the book for all of us, for anybody who's trying to find a way through middle school, be it, kids, parents, teachers. I think like you said, the key is just like being on the same team, listening to each other. So I'm excited to be here, hanging out with you.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. Yeah. So one of the things you know what? Let's start with, tell me what you're doing now. What is your day-to-day now?
Wow. So my day-to-day now is I'm working as an instructional coach. So my day-to-day now, I am in classrooms every day, standing shoulder to shoulder with teachers, working with the kids that they love. And so it is really exciting work. I mean, it is a little bit of dreaming, a little bit of problem solving, a little bit of like inventing, all rolled up in one, right? Like we are really thinking about where do we want kids tomorrow? Where do we want kids by the end of the year? Where do we want kids in a lifetime? And how do we use this period to get them there? So it's that kind of dreaming. It's that kind of problem solving, right? You're like, here's the thing that's not quite working. How do I get it to go? It's that kind of inventing, really thinking, here's the thing that I wish existed for kids and it doesn't yet. So we get to build it. And so my pendulum can swing anywhere from, all right, we're in the recess yard trying to figure out how we bolster collaboration through like gamifying a concept, to, we're in the cafeteria measuring scale for a geometry class, to, I'm in Brooklyn. So we're by the Navy Yard. And so we were right by the water in the Navy Yard testing soil samples and water samples for potential lead with the science teacher, and really, figuring out how we were going to get kids to talk about our local flora and fauna and the impact that humans are having on the ecosystem. And so like it can be anything, so my day to day is just, being curious, standing next to teachers and pursuing what they want to pursue.
I love it. I love it. And I say to my students when I introduce your book, and I so respect this about you, most people have a successful book and then they just leave schools, and they start to help a lot of schools. But I always say I so respect that this guy wrote this book and he's still like in schools and in a district and working every day
Wow.
at this. And so it's great to hear you describe that, and I can tell you still are so passionate about it.
Thank you.
One of the things that sort of blows my mind about your book and about your work is it really balances that we got this really balances like these clear like actionable steps like classroom meetings, like
Yeah.
lesson plan thinking charts, like these are like
Yeah.
takeaways. You provide the resources online, I share them with my students. They're like these actionable things, but it balances these actionable things with like deep mindset work,
Yeah.
like really the way you talk about listening to what students say, but listening to what they don't say and listening to their body language, and then having it impact everything we do. Um, I really love how you balance. A lot of books are the actionable steps. A lot of books are the mindset, and yours is just it does both. Have
Wow.
you ever thought of it that way? Do you know you've done that for a lot of
Yeah.
readers?
Well, Tim, that's who we are every day, right? Like, I try to think about what I want. I remember as a young teacher sitting in a PD, and this woman had come to my school and she was just telling me what to do. But she didn't talk to me about like why I should be doing it, how I should be thinking about it, the mindset that I should bring to the classroom. And so I had this component that was absent of all of the context, right? And so she wanted me to do this reading with kids, but she didn't tell me why the reading was important. She didn't tell me how I should feel about the reading. She didn't tell me how she wanted like kids' hearts to feel as we were moving through the reading. And so like I think so much of what we're asked to do, especially now as educators, is divorced from the context that makes it matter. And so educators find themselves burnt out or disconnected because what we are being told to do isn't always tied to the realities that we want to change. And I think the same is true for kids. If I step into a science class and I tell kids, oh, here's how to measure a soil sample, here's how to calculate the density of the water, right? But I don't tell them, hey, we're calculating the density of this water because it can have an impact on what your little brother drinks every day. We're measuring the soil samples and we're testing for lead because they're going to build a playground out there. And we want to make sure that every kid in this neighborhood feels safe. And you have a voice. And if we find any trace of lead in that soil, we're going to write to our city council person, right? Now, all of a sudden, science matters. So I'm not just asking you to test a soil sample because of some dumb equation. I'm asking you to test the soil sample because we're building a playground that's going to impact every kid that lives in your neighborhood, right? And that matters to me. Like that the thing is tied to deep context and deep meaning. Equations mean nothing, but equations in service of your little brother mean everything, right? Curriculum means nothing, but curriculum to change the community that you grew up in means everything, right? And so I think we have to talk about the mindset and the instructional moves at the same time. It's
Yeah, and
context.
that's one of my big takeaways from your book is you often refer to it as like building a bridge between
Yeah.
what we're learning and like why it matters and why it can impact your life. And but you
Yeah.
go, a lot of educators say that, but you're so specific in the book, and you don't let the reader off the hook. Like
Yeah.
it's like I say to my students, I'm kind of like, this isn't like, once a month build some context.
Yeah.
This is a daily bridge we're building. And I love the one where they're writing like persuasive essays or something, and you tell them
Yeah.
in the book like, you might want to be convincing your parents to get more freedom, like
Yeah.
that's the same thing as a persuasive essay, and
Exactly.
it's such a great
Exactly.
connection.
Yeah, but it all goes back to what we would have wanted as kids. I mean, I remember being 13 and I wanted nothing more than to go hang out at the pool. There's a pool in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
and my parents wouldn't let me go to the pool unless there was like a lifeguard or some other adult there, which I totally get now as a parent myself. But all my friends would be at the pool,
Yeah.
and like I'm like, and my parents always said no, and nobody ever sat me down and was like, Cornelius, here's how you frame an argument so that you get an adult to listen to you,
Yeah.
right? And so when I'm introducing essays to kids, I talk about that all the time. I'm like, yeah, this essay in my class matters, but how you talk to your parents matters more, right? This
Yeah.
essay in my class matters, but how you like advocate for yourself when a business has charged you too much money, or how you advocate for yourself when you need something, that matters more. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It really resonates with me.
yeah,
What are your other big takeaways? You talk a lot about choices and
yeah.
kids need choice in their learning.
Mhm.
You talk a lot about opportunities for
Yeah,
practice,
yeah,
which
yeah.
I'm a big believer in. Kids need low stakes attempts at
Hmm.
practicing things.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm into recently, I've really been talking with a lot of kids and grown-ups about imagination. Just, things feel really tight right now, like politically, economically. Kids feel like they have fewer and fewer options. Teachers feel like they have fewer and fewer options. There are so many mandates that teachers are really grappling with right now, where again, we're being told to do so many things that don't quite make sense in the context of our unique communities or classrooms. And so I've really been talking with kids and grown-ups a lot about what does it mean to imagine a way forward that we can realize together, right? Instead of waiting for someone to tell us what to do when there's a challenge or a problem, what could it be to imagine our own like solutions or to imagine our own way forward? I was talking to a very good friend of mine. We went to graduate school together, and there was a there was this like component of social studies that wasn't working out for him. He was just like, every year we get to this part of the textbook and kids just absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's so predictable. I can predict every March we're going to get to this part and kids are just going to like check out. And I was just like, how long has this been happening? He's like,
Yeah.
oh, for the last 3 years. He's like, every time we get to this one unit, kids just check out. And I was like, dude, why don't you just change it? Like, and he was like, I couldn't possibly do that. We're supposed to kind of follow the textbook as it's scripted. And I was just like, if you have data that you've collected for the last 3 marches in a row, that
Yeah.
kids are 100% plugged in, except for when you get to this part, for the last 3 years, they've always checked out. That's enough anecdotal data that you've got to like imagine your way forward. So let's kind of think about that together. And we kind of sat and we were kind of sitting in the back of his room. And I was just like, well, what would it go like if kids didn't check out? How could you imagine that? He's like, oh, I've never really thought about that. And I was like, well, what have you been thinking about? He was like, well, I was just going to wait for the curriculum coordinator to tell me what to do. And I was like, but it's so funny. So much of teaching is let me just wait for the person up top to tell me what to do. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that way. And so I've really been thinking about how do I institutionalize imagination?
Mm.
That when a thing isn't going well, how first step, we notice it's not going well. Second step, collect some data. Third step, let's imagine something new, right? And so, because I was just like, you would have been in this classroom waiting for the curriculum developer or the curriculum coordinator to come. That person ain't coming. That person loves us. That person has
Yeah.
a really busy job, but that
Yeah.
person's not coming. And so, like, I think so much of what teaching has been in the past is let me just wait for somebody to rescue me by telling me what to do. And what it can be is it can be you and me sitting in the back of our classroom, really like analyzing what's not working, collecting data, looking at student work samples, and really imagining the way forward. Yeah,
Yeah. And so two responses to that.
yeah,
Well, three responses. First, can you write
yeah.
that book, please? All right, I'm ready to buy it. Okay. That's number one. Number two, hearing you talk about that, that's how the book always feels to me, right? You just
Yeah,
took this word, imagine, which I
yeah,
may say 3 times today without thinking about it. And
yeah.
just in that quick description, you make it so much bigger. So my
Wow.
students that are listening are going to be like, come on, Alan, don't start coming at us about imagining everything. You know, but that I'm telling you that the way you
Yeah,
do that, I respect it so much. And number three, that goes to a lot of what I am interested in as well, which is,
yeah,
teaching has become more and more scripted,
yeah,
and more, curriculum programs and more
yeah,
boxed stuff. And
yeah,
and I get it. I understand why, for many
yeah.
reasons, it's gone
Hmm.
in that direction. I can't say I'm a big fan of the word fidelity.
Yeah.
That is not one that I preach, even though
Hmm.
sometimes I guess it should be. But
Yeah,
however, what I tell my students and what I used to tell newer teachers is like, you got to find the stuff
yeah,
that you control, and you got to like dive into it and
yeah,
control it and enjoy controlling
yeah,
it and enjoy imagining how that unit could be better. And
yeah,
then, we all have resources we're going to use, but we all have a lot of freedom too in those classrooms.
yeah.
And so I love the way you frame that, and I
Hmm.
agree with you that that's going to be so important for education moving forward. We can't become robots,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
we're not going to have any talent.
Exactly, and I think about it's interesting because I've been thinking about that word too, fidelity, and I'm like, and again, when I think about imagining a future that is sustainable for teachers and powerful for young people, I imagine that I want fidelity, but fidelity to students,
Yeah.
right? And when I think about fidelity to students, that absolutely ties into how we think about curriculum. Like fidelity to students means if I have a curricular experience at school and students suddenly become disengaged, that's a moment now for me to ask questions. Right.
Yeah.
So every time I go to read this one article, or every time I go to give this one lecture, or every time I go to this one activity, they all unplug. Let me learn about why they're unplugging. Oh, they're unplugging from this activity because it doesn't give them a chance to process before they go right. Okay,
Mm.
so what would happen if I created a processing step before the writing step that was scripted for me, right? That's what it means to have fidelity to kids, right? I'm still in my curriculum, but I'm also really paying attention to the kids. Oh, they always unplug right before they go to writing. What is it about that? Let me be curious about that. All right. My kids do really well when they have an opportunity to process through graphic organizers or visual planners, or when they have an opportunity to talk an idea out. So I'm going to shift the curriculum that I've been given by 15 minutes to give kids
Yeah.
5 minutes of processing time, 10 minutes of drawing time before they go to write. And so now somebody's going to come into my room and they're going to be like, why aren't you doing the curriculum as scripted? And I'm like, I'm exactly doing the curriculum with extraordinary fidelity to kids. I noticed in my data collection that kids were all unplugging at minute 12. And then I asked myself, what's happening at minute 12? Oh, they've been asked to write without an opportunity to process. And so instead of doing the writing at minute 12, I shifted the writing to minute 28 to give them 5 minutes of processing time and 10 minutes of drawing time before they start their writing. And so
Yeah, I love it. You just changed the word fidelity in all the right
yeah,
ways. In all
yeah,
the right ways.
yeah. And so, I'm really big into data collection and reflection. All right, the data is showing me that at minute 12, every kid checks out and they slam their pencil on the desk.
Mm.
Or, 17 of 25 slam their pencil on the desk and put their heads down. All right, that's data. All right, right. And
Yeah.
so how do I move that needle forward? How do I get, those 17 kids to pick their pencils back up and go? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's such a good use of the word data too, right? Because we,
yeah,
we get so used to data, meaning the formative assessment, the statewide test, and
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
it.
No, I always tell people data is not a proper noun owned by the testing companies.
Yes.
Like yeah, exactly.
Yeah, some of
Yeah,
our best data is free, and we can find it in places we're
exactly.
looking. Um,
Exactly. And I show people how to I've really been with all the teachers that I coach, we collect it actively. In a typical classroom of 25, one kid is 4%, right?
okay.
And so if I'm doing a writing activity and three kids slam their pencils down, I'm like, all right, 12% of my class just became disengaged at minute number 8. Let's think about that. Let's reflect on that. So right now I've only got 88% of my class, with me because
Yeah,
12% just checked out. What can I do to get that 12% back?
yeah,
And how can we as a department begin to look at that
yeah,
together? And it also makes these big conversations a lot smaller. I talk to people all the time. Our school right now, we're going through some challenges like many schools are going through, and we just had a big meeting, and they were like, oh yeah, our numbers were like 8% down, and if we can somehow make up 8%, you know, we'll be on the good list.
yeah.
And I'm like, 8% isn't impossible. It's two kids in every classroom, right? And so how do we get two kids who aren't on board on board? What's the lift required to get there? So all of a sudden now, it's not this impossible vision. It's a thing that really feels tangible.
Yeah, that's such a
Yeah,
good way to look at it.
yeah.
All right, you're coming to a middle school conference next week.
Yo, yes.
About 500 people in the room. You're gonna give a
Yeah,
morning keynote. It's
yes,
people are gonna come in. We have a cocktail hour the night before. They're gonna
yes.
be there, but they're gonna.
Yeah.
So what? Talk to me about your experience with middle school. Your thinking on middle school. What can we
Mm.
expect?
Well, Tim, every minute of my entire professional life has been spent in middle school. That's
There you go.
that's what
That's why we're
I
connected. That's why we're connected. I see.
that's what I do. But beyond my professional life, I think about my personhood. I am a person. Um, a student, who could have easily been lost to the system that is school. But I had three extraordinary middle school teachers who did everything that they could to ensure that middle school, while it was a hard time for me, they made sure that it was an effective time for me.
Hmm.
And they made sure that I grew a lot. And so, I think about my work every day, and I will spend the rest of my life paying back those three teachers, for everything they did to me, and everything they did for me. And so, our time together at NELMS, I'm really looking forward, to connecting with people. You mentioned like cocktail hour and social opportunities, but I'm also looking forward to thinking with people. This idea that the way forward must be legislated and scripted is one that we both find challenge with. And so being able to sit in a room of 500 people and to co-construct how we move forward as middle school people is a huge honor. And I'm really excited to do that, both intellectual labor with people and that emotional labor with people. That folks, often leave out the emotional part. That we are the people who intervene in children's lives at the most volatile time in their intellectual and academic development.
Yeah.
That's emotional labor, Tim. And so whenever I do work with teachers, I want to make sure that I acknowledge this extraordinarily emotional lift that we do again at this volatile time of life, and volatile in all the ways, right?
Yeah.
Volatile in like beautiful, you're growing and changing, and volatile in terms of like, what the hell did you just do, right? But and I think that's what makes our work as middle school people so beautiful,
Yeah.
right? That it is so wildly unpredictable, right? And when you look at, I'm in New York City, I go to museums every weekend, and, you'll always hear the museum docent talking about the unpredictable nature of a Picasso, or the surprise that you find when you're looking at a Renoir, or the sudden delight of looking at a Basquiat, right? And we get that every day in a middle school classroom. We get those surprises, those sudden delights. They might be shocking, but we get that real beauty in a middle school classroom every day.
Totally agree. It's like
Yeah,
the whole thing is unpredictable, but the only
yeah,
thing that's predictable is they need us so
yeah,
bad,
yeah,
and so
yeah.
what we do in middle schools is so important, and what all the educators do. Well, I know you're going to love the NELMS conference because it's full of practitioners. And it's I think our March timing is good too because it's at a
Yeah.
time when people need a boost and they get the
Mhm.
boost like in the
Yeah.
first 20 minutes of being around each other,
Yeah.
And then to your thing about the thinking, I've always found at this conference that that's what happens. Just everybody gets excited to think.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think you'll be charged up by the energy.
Yeah.
I have a quick lightning round to finish, which I didn't
Let's do
prepare.
it.
So it's just three simple questions. You're from
Hmm.
Brooklyn. First one,
Yes.
Yankees or Mets?
Look, man, don't start no fights out here. Don't start no fights out here.
I thought you
Don't
might
start no fights out here.
I
So,
thought
so I'm gonna give the political answer, and the real
uh,
answer. I am an old school Mets fan,
okay.
but a Yankee fitted cap is part of the uniform,
Yeah.
right? And so you will often see me wearing a Yankee fitted cap. But even when I taught in the Bronx, we would take the D train and connect to the 7 just to go all the way to Mets games at the old Shea Stadium. So I'm one of them Shea Stadium dudes.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
yeah, so
Last one,
yeah.
last one. Jay-Z or Nas? You got a preference there?
Sir, don't start no fights, both, right? Like, so my zip code is Brooklyn. I am, and
Yeah.
so I always got to put it down, for Brooklyn. But I think that Nas's pen, um, is one of the most beautiful things in our lifetimes. That I remember where I was the morning I heard Illmatic.
Yeah.
I was lined up at the record store at 11:55 p.m.
Mm.
To get that second album, It Was Written. I remember like literally listening to the tape, and my Walkman at the time didn't have a rewind function, so I'd have to get a pencil and spin the tape just so I could
Yeah.
listen again.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so definitely, respect to both, but I listen to Nas's pen, with a degree of reverence and wonder, every time I hit play. Yeah.
Nice. Good, great answer. Great answer.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. No, well, I so appreciate you joining me here,
Yeah.
Cornelius, and I hope you understand how much I look up to you and value your work.
Thank
And
you.
I don't want to push you on it, but we're hoping there's another book coming. We do
Yeah,
hope.
it's yeah,
You know
it's
that
coming.
time
Like
of life, you got a lot going on. I get it. So
I am sitting in the office right now, knee deep in sticky notes and
yeah,
stuff like
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
so it's coming. It's coming.
Uh,
But Tim, just like the insight and the excitement that you invest in the future of our profession, right? That we are nothing if there's no one who comes behind us, and that
yeah.
you are ensuring that folks come behind us to carry this church forward really matters. So thank you for being who you are. Thank you for your vision and for your leadership as well.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it. I appreciate it. A lot of my
yeah.
students will be there on Friday to see you, and they're going to want to
Fantastic.
shake your hand afterwards. So we look
For
forward.
sure. Well, let's do it like informal hangout. We'll make it happen. Like, yeah.
I appreciate it. Well,
Awesome.
thank you,
Awesome.
Cornelius, so much, and thank you for listening here on the Teacher's Cup of Coffee.